This is the story of Kim Woojin, a tired game developer working for a rising South Korean studio called AAA-grade. For months, he's been stuck debugging the same frustrating character, Deculein von Grahan-Yukline, an arrogant mid-boss who always dies early in the game. He hates this character. The guy is fake, prideful, a so-called genius with nothing to back it up. Just a villain created to fall for the sake of others. Nothing more than a stepping stone in the story. Then, one night, the screen flashes. The game doesn't crash. It ends perfectly. And the next moment, Woojin wakes up as Deculine, not in the office, not in his apartment, but inside the game. Now he's trapped in the body of the very character he designed to die. A man hated by everyone. A man doomed to fail no matter what, surrounded by enemies, buried under noble pride, walking a path lined with death flags. But Woojin has one thing no one else in this world does. He knows how the story ends. And this time, he's not going down so easily. Heavy rain pours down, drowning the world in a relentless downpour. A man sits slumped against an iron grill, his back pressed against the cold, unyielding surface. A sword is buried deep in his chest, the steel piercing through his body like a cruel final embrace. His breath is shallow, his body weak, but his spirit refuses to break. His gaze, filled with defiant pride, locks onto the woman gripping the hilt of the blade. Despite the unbearable pain, his eyes burn with a final demand. If she truly wants him dead, she must finish the job. The woman, her face devoid of emotion, does not hesitate. The blade twists inside his chest, splitting him open as blood gushes out. Not a single groan escapes his lips. Strength fades from his body, yet he does not look away. His final words slip out. He tells the woman that she looks as beautiful as ever. His trembling fingers reach up, smearing blood across her cheek. But her expression does not change. She remains as cold as the day he first captured her heart. The world around him fades and his body goes still. A notification appears, flashing on the screen. Engagement breaking. Condition: Deculine's death. Then another notification appears. Congratulations, stage cleared. A sigh of relief comes from a voice behind the screen. On the other side sits Kim Woojin, a tired man with dark circles under his eyes and a keyboard that's seen better days. He watches the game screen carefully. For hours, he has been fighting a bug that keeps breaking the final scene. Again and again, it crashed. Again and again, he fixed something and tried again. Now, for the first time, everything works perfectly. The game plays without freezing. The screen moves smoothly. The scene finishes without problems. Kim Woojin works at AAA-grade, a South Korean game studio that's been surprising the world lately. In the past, people thought the company was where game ideas went to die. No one took them seriously, but things changed. They started creating one successful game after another. Now people talk about AAA-grade with respect. Their newest game is their biggest project yet. All their money, all their time, and all their energy has gone into this one title. If it fails, the company might not survive. There's no backup plan. This game isn't like other games. The most exciting part is the dynamic difficulty. The story changes depending on what the player does. Every choice matters. Even though it's a single-player game, it feels alive. The AI thinks for itself. The characters feel real. Gamers all over the world are already excited. If AAA-grade can finish this game and launch it without problems, it could change everything. But if they fail, they'll be remembered as the studio that flew too close to the sun and burned. Players in this game are not locked into simple roles. They have a wide choice of character classes: knights with strong armor, mages with powerful spells, explorers who search the unknown, demons who play the evil path, demon hunters who fight them, nobles full of pride, and even kings who hold entire kingdoms in their hands. The game offers freedom, and every player can become whoever they want to be. If the game becomes a hit, it will rain gold for AAA-grade. But if it fails, the whole studio will come crashing down with it. There's no second chance. Kim Woojin sits back and sighs. His eyes stay on the screen, tired but focused. His thoughts turn to the character settings again. One name jumps out at him, one that has caused nothing but pain: Deculein von Grahan-Yukline. This guy has been the reason for so many sleepless nights. Woojin mutters to himself, but there's no hiding his frustration. He has been pulling overtime for months because of this single character. Deculine isn't just some background villain. He holds the title of head professor and plays a major part in the early part of the story. The episode Woojin just finished debugging focuses on his death, an important event that happens within the first 11 hours of gameplay. Deculine was never meant to live long. Woojin designed him with a very specific purpose: to lose. The guy acts clever, pretends to be important, and plays his little mind games. But in the end, he always fails, and he deserves it. For all his arrogance, Deculine is just a mid-boss, not the final threat. Yet somehow, his tangled role in different storylines kept breaking the game. Fixing him has been a nightmare. To make sure everything runs smoothly, Woojin planned his downfall carefully. This time, the arrogant villain meets his end at the hands of his own fiancee's blade. It's poetic justice. A snake like him gets bitten back. Woojin stretches his stiff arms, thinking it's time to test the game again. But before he can continue, a voice calls from behind. He doesn't turn. He already knows who it is. The voice belongs to Ra, team leader of the game development group. She doesn't need to introduce herself. They share too much history for that. Once, they were a couple together for 7 long years. Good years, mostly. Even with their differences, they had found joy together. Woojin never liked hard work, but Ra's fire pushed him to grow. Her never-give-up attitude rubbed off on him, turning him from a lazy dreamer into someone who could actually finish what he started. But in the end, it wasn't enough. She wanted change. She wanted someone more open, someone who would talk, share, and connect. Woojin just wasn't that person. 6 months after they'd broke up, news reached him. She had moved on. It hurt, but he didn't say anything. Now the necklace around her neck confirms the rumor. A new relationship, a new chapter. He makes a small comment about it, trying to hide the sting in his chest. She answers simply. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet truth. Yes, things are going well. His fingers tap the mouse, a rhythm to cover the awkward silence. He wishes her happiness, even if it leaves a bitter taste. He wonders aloud if he sounds a little pathetic. She doesn't answer right away, but there's a small smirk on her lips. Her eyebrows lift slightly. She doesn't mock him, but she doesn't deny it either. She tells him to get back to work. There are changes in the settings, and the character models need updates. No time to sit around in the past. There's a game to finish and a deadline to meet. Woojin lets out a groan, tired and frustrated. The script keeps changing, and every new version brings another wave of confusion. He doesn't understand why the author refuses to keep things consistent. Deculine, in particular, annoys him. This so-called mid-boss keeps coming back stronger, acting like he's some big deal, when in reality he's nothing but a glorified speed bump. A flashy one, maybe, but still just a stepping stone. Ra offers an explanation. She says it's intentional. Deculine starts weak, but becomes more powerful as the story moves forward. His strength grows based on the player's decisions. Woojin doesn't say much after that. His thoughts drift, but Ara isn't finished. She drops a bomb, says the model for Deculine is actually based on him. His head snaps around. Shock hits him hard. He doesn't believe it for a second. He thinks back to how little contact he had with the author. Only met them twice. That couldn't be enough to base a character on someone. But Ra just smiles, a quiet and knowing smile. She says it's true. Then, almost casually, she points out that she just killed him off at the start of the game. That makes it worse somehow. Woojin doesn't find it funny. He wonders aloud if they even have similar personalities. Ra nods without hesitation. The answer comes too fast for his liking. He sighs, then makes a half-joke, one that touches on their breakup. It's bitter and half-serious. Her expression shifts. It hardens like stone. Woojin lifts his hands, pretending to surrender. He admits that maybe he sounds a little pathetic again. That word keeps following him around lately. Ra has had enough of his self-pity. She cuts him off, changing the subject. She wants to talk about the game itself. She asks about the player experience. Woojin answers honestly. He thinks the game is fun, but it stresses him out. Too much is riding on it. The future of the whole studio depends on this single release. She tells him not to worry. The early trailer has already become a hit online. People are excited. The buzz is real. He says that's good news. If things go well, maybe he'll get a bonus. His desk is near the window, and he looks outside for a second. A sleek, shiny car waits by the front entrance of the building. He turns back to Ra and nods toward it. There's a quiet joke in his voice. He points at the car and asks Ra if that is not her boyfriend out there. The guy looks like he's trying too hard, like he wants everyone to know he drives something expensive. Woojin wonders out loud who's more pathetic, him or the flashy driver outside. Ra doesn't respond. Woojin then asks her what she's doing here any longer. He tells her not to make him wait any longer. She should go to him. She agrees and says then she'll be leaving now, and her steps take her away before Woojin even turns to look. He stays focused on the screen, replying without meeting her eyes. He tells her to rest. She wishes him luck with his work and walks away. To him, she has always been more than perfect, not just on the outside, but deep within. Her kindness, her fire, her strength, they all added up to something rare. She had changed his life in ways no one else could. In his eyes, she had been his greatest treasure, the only person who ever made him believe that change was possible. Something real, something worth fighting for. He whispers a goodbye even though he knows she won't hear it. The word disappears into the hum of the office. His chest feels tight for a moment, but then he lets out a deep sigh and turns his attention back to the glowing screen. It's time to test Deculine again. He shakes his head, almost laughing at how rough the author has been with this character. If this villain is really based on him, then the writer must have a personal grudge. Deculine has 6 main attributes and the backstory of a so-called magical genius. As a child, people praised him and placed him high above others, calling him gifted and rare. But in truth, he was just an average mage, nothing more. The fake image others built around him twisted his personality. His noble birth made things worse. He became proud, bossy, and full of himself. Woojin scrolls through the traits again: elitist, moody, too sensitive, always ordering people around, fake deep thinker, stubborn to the core, obsessed with control, and lacking faith in anything. The guy's a walking red flag. Deculine is supposed to grow as the story unfolds, but Woojin notices he's already surrounded by enemies. The whole world seems to be waiting to tear him down. That's what happens when you act like royalty without the crown to back it up. Woojin leans back and wonders if they should give Deculine one more layer, just something small. Something that makes him more human. Maybe a bit of empathy, or at least the ability to understand others. That way, players wouldn't hate him right away. He chuckles and starts typing. He gives Deculine some over-the-top traits, jokingly. A kind soul, filthy rich magic that turns anything to gold, sharp vision, and an iron body. It's a bit much. Even for a fantasy villain, it sounds ridiculous. After looking at it for a minute, Woojin sighs again. It's too much. He feels a bit embarrassed by what he added. Probably better to undo it before someone notices. He moves his mouse to remove the new traits and bring the character back to his original form. Just then, a soft sound breaks the quiet. A message pops up on the screen, pulling him from his thoughts. It's from Lane, the game's author and head of the ad department. Just from the name alone, anyone could tell he's not from around here. Woojin types back quickly, saying he's still working. He even offers to change the character models if needed. But the next message from Lane is strange. He says he's not here to give instructions. He's just watching. Woojin freezes. That word makes his skin crawl. Watching. He glances around the room. The lights flicker slightly, but the office is empty. No one stands behind him. Still, something feels off. He types back, asking what Lane means. Watching who? A screen flickers, then a reply appears. A playful message, with a smiling emoticon and a strange laugh. Lane tells him to look out the window. Woojin turns his head slowly. The window shows the sky outside, quiet at first. Then, in a flash, everything changes. A streak of lightning rips through the clouds, glowing like veins across the sky. The light floods the room, blinding for a second. The sound that follows is loud enough to shake the walls. Thunder crashes, so close it makes the floor tremble. In the next moment, the office disappears. His voice echoes in confusion. The room is gone. The screens are gone. His desk, his chair, the world he knows gone. Now he's somewhere else. He sees a man kneeling on the ground, coughing weakly. Dirt and blood cover his clothes. Another man stands over him, voice firm and full of warning. His tone cuts through the air like a blade. The message is clear. Deculine is not someone to be trusted. Dropping your guard is even worse. Deculine is the worst of the worst. A man who wears hesitation like a mask, only to strike the moment others relax. He acts unsure now, but anyone who lets their guard down around him is a fool. He hides his power and pretends to be weaker than he is. He lies through every breath and smiles through every betrayal. He is a polished monster in noble clothes. Scenario changes, and an angry female voice demands that Deculine get up. No room for laziness. No excuse to stay down. The voice drills into his head, insulting him, breaking him down. It questions his worth as a human being. Woojin hears every word, but they get differently now, because the one being scolded isn't just a character, it's him. He has been living inside the body of Deculein von Grahan-Yukline for a few days now. At first, he thought it was a dream. He even tried to sleep again, hoping that closing his eyes would take him back to reality. But no matter how many times he wakes up, the truth doesn't change. He's stuck. The angry voice belongs to Uriel, Deculine's sister. She is furious beyond reason. Her eyes flash with rage, not just as a sibling, but as someone who sees disgrace where there should be pride. She shouts, loud enough to shake the walls, demanding he stop sulking over a woman. She sees him as a shame to the entire family. She hurls the stack of papers at him with more force than necessary. The sheets scatter across the floor, some sliding under the nearby furniture. Her face is red with anger, not just because of what he's doing now, but because of what he's become. Then she gives him a final warning, telling him to get up and show up for the professor position he once held with pride, or... Then she storms out, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than her shouting. It has now been 1 full week since that strange lightning filled the sky, and Woojin woke up in this twisted new reality. The world around him looks exactly like the one from his game. The design, the structure, the clothes, it all matches. But this is no simulation. You can feel everything. The pain, the pressure, the weight of being someone else. And not just anyone. He has become the worst character ever written into the story, a man everyone hates, a villain doomed to die no matter what he does, the coward in noble robes, the failure in the professor's chair, one and only Deculine. Woojin takes a moment to think back on everything that has happened in the past week. At first, the strange world around him felt like a dream. It was too strange, too sudden, and too unreal. But with each passing day, the sharp feeling of the cold floor beneath him, the weight of Deculine's clothes, and the heavy stare of others pushed one truth forward. This is not a dream. This is real. He is no longer Woojin, game developer. He is now Deculein von Grahan-Yukline, the most hated character in the very game he helped build. Deculine was never meant to be anything more than a mid-tier boss. He was designed to lose. Nearly every storyline in the game ended with his death. 999 out of 1,000 playthroughs dead. That's how useless and unwanted the character was. It didn't matter what path the player chose. Deculine always found a way to become a problem. He stood in the way, caused pain, and then dropped dead when his role was over. Woojin finds it hard not to laugh at the cruel joke of it all. Out of all the possible characters he could have become, he ends up stuck inside the skin of the most miserable one. The only thing even close to an advantage is Deculine's mana. His body holds a large reserve of magical energy. But Woojin doesn't know how fast it drains, how to control it properly, or what the limits are. That uncertainty makes everything worse. Having power without knowing how to use it is like holding a sword by the blade. He remembers the early stages of development. Deculine was never meant to survive. His entire purpose was to push the story forward by losing. He existed only so the main characters could rise. That thought sits like a stone in Woojin's chest. His eyes fall to the stack of papers Uriel threw at him earlier. The top sheet holds his title clearly, Professor Deculine, Imperial University. The paper is part of a lesson plan called Basic Understanding of Magic and Mindset Toward Mana. It sounds boring just by the title, but it's also his job now. Uriel von Grahan-Yukline is his half-sister. He reflects on her behavior earlier. She handed him the documents over without care, like tossing garbage onto the floor. Her attitude made their relationship clear, cold, distant, and full of disappointment. He remembers that she runs the Yukline household in his place, and from the look in her eyes, she would rather he stay gone. Woojin thinks about the woman Uriel mentioned during her angry rant. He guesses it must be Yuli. That name stings for more than one reason. The warning Uriel gave is still fresh in his mind. If he wants to keep this position as professor, then he has no choice. He has to act like Deculine. He has to get up, prepare, and go give that lecture. The word professor strikes something deep inside. Woojin has never stood in front of a classroom before. But this world isn't giving him time to doubt himself. He needs to learn everything he can, and quickly. Moreover, his system prompt had just appeared, laying out his most important goal for survival, to become someone the world could not do without. A secondary task had also popped up. He needed to deliver a lecture at the university. The reward for completing that small task was only 0.5 store currency, but in a place like this, even a tiny reward could be valuable. That goal, combined with Uriel's cold warning, pushed him to act. He is well aware of how fragile Deculine's life is. Death waits at nearly every corner. Many of those possible ends could even come from Uriel herself. She might be his sister, but trust in this family runs thin, and her eyes always seem to hold a quiet threat. The value of store currency doesn't slip past him. In this world, it could be the difference between survival and becoming just another forgotten boss. His mirrors about the lecture lessen a little when he remembers Deculine's unique trait, understanding. He had added that attribute himself. Woojin gave it to Deculine as a way to make him slightly more human, something for the players to connect with. Now, that same trait might help him survive. He dresses in Deculine's noble clothing, feeling the strange fabric wrap around his nude body. The clothes feel expensive, clean, and a bit too formal for someone who once wore the same hoodie for days at a time. The bathroom is large and spotless, nothing like the small one-bedroom apartment Woojin used to live in. Yet his movements are smooth and confident, as if this life had always belonged to him. The attributes of this body begin to show. Intimidation, dignity, and an impeccable sense of style, these are not things Woojin had in his old life. The way he stands, the way he talks, even the way he thinks, Deculine's identity begins to surface. It doesn't take over, but it blends into his actions. He catches himself following noble customs without even trying. There's still a clear goal, gather as much information as possible. But even with that in mind, the idea of standing in front of a class and teaching no longer feels impossible. Somehow, it feels like second nature. In this world, Deculine is a noble, a person of status, a man born into power. Woojin scoffs at the thought. He may be tall and decent looking, but back in South Korea, he was just a regular guy. His own ex-girlfriend once described him as a lazy mess, a man full of excuses, not ambition. That version of him still exists beneath the fancy robes and expensive shoes. He reminds himself not to forget who he is. No matter how convincing this world becomes, he refuses to lose the core of his own identity. He steps into the car waiting for him. The comfort hits him right away. Soft leather, polished surfaces, a scent of wealth in the air, it's a level of luxury he has never experienced before. It reminds him of that guy his ex is dating now. The type who shows off his money like a badge. The thought still bothers him. Inside the car, a young man greets him nervously. The tone is respectful, and the title professor is used without hesitation. The man hands him a document, looking unsure but obedient. Woojin assumes he's some sort of assistant or secretary, someone who's used to following orders without question. Curious, Woojin asks if the young man is a wizard. The answer that comes is quick and polite. The man has been serving Deculine for 3 years. Woojin quickly sets this aside and shifts his attention to the document in his hands. At first, he expects to find lecture notes, maybe some rough points or a list of topics to discuss. Instead, what he finds is a complete script. Every word, every pause, even the flow of the lecture has been written out in detail from start to finish. It becomes clear right away, Deculine never prepared this himself. A man full of pride but lacking the real skill to back it up wouldn't bother with something so tedious. This must be the work of the young assistant. The boy probably handled everything behind the scenes while Deculine took all the credit like the pompous fraud he was designed to be. Woojin looks at the assistant and thanks him, telling him he did well. The boy nods politely and seems almost surprised by the kind words. Woojin then suggests he rest until they arrive. The response is obedient, calm, and practiced. But deep down, Woojin feels a strange discomfort. It creeps in slowly like a shadow he didn't notice until it wrapped around his chest. He wonders if this uneasiness is truly his, or if it's something bleeding in from Deculine's personality. Maybe this body, with all its rigid pride and noble filth, is starting to sink its claws into his mind. The driver speaks, snapping him out of his thoughts. They've arrived. Woojin steps out and takes in the scene. The Imperial University stands tall and proud. The place is massive, a shining symbol of power and knowledge. Every stone looks expensive. This is where Deculine works. This is the world he must now live in. Inside Rotio Hall, students wait, their eyes bright with curiosity and expectation. They whisper among themselves, voices low but excited. Some talk about how lucky they are to attend a lecture by the head professor. Others speak about Deculine's rare talent for spell interpretation and how he was once called a child genius. What a joke. The same people praising him now would probably stab him the moment he slipped. All that respect, built on lies and reputation. Woojin knows better than anyone how fake it all is. He walks to the front, standing tall in the role he now must play. He introduces himself formally, speaking with the kind of calm authority Deculine would be proud of. Some of the female students murmur softly, clearly taken in by his looks and intelligence. But among the crowd, one student burns with hate. Her thoughts are loud and bitter, sharper than a knife. She sees nothing admirable in him. To her, Deculine is not a respected professor. He is trash. The man responsible for destroying her father. The moment she sees him, she knows this is the enemy. The girl in the crowd, the one burning with quiet rage, is named Ephraim. 3 years ago, her world crumbled in a single cruel moment. Her father, Kagan, had dedicated his life to the study of spell interpretation. It wasn't just work for him, it was his life's passion. But everything he built was taken from him. His thesis, the result of countless years of research, was stolen. And the thief was no other than the so-called genius, praised across the empire, Deculein von Grahan-Yukline. People clapped for his brilliance. They celebrated his rise. But no one saw the blood behind his success. Ephraim's father, broken by betrayal and humiliation, took his own life. That tragedy tore through her like a storm. After his death, Ephraim lost everything. Her noble title, her family's home, their land, all gone. She was left behind with nothing but grief and hate. And she made a promise. One day, she would take back everything. She would not let her father's name be forgotten or his murderer go unpunished. Through pure determination, Ephraim clawed her way into the Royal University. It wasn't easy, not with the shadow of her ruined family hanging over her. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Because this university wasn't just a school. It was a battlefield. And her target stood at the center of it, Deculine himself. She knew the truth. That fancy title of his, the lectures, the fame, it all sat on a stolen throne. His so-called skill and spell interpretation was nothing more than her father's stolen legacy. Every compliment he received, every round of applause was a lie. Her rage only grew with each smug step he took through those halls. Arrogant, entitled, and rotten to the core, Deculine had no right to be where he was. But Ephraim is not reckless. She keeps her hatred tucked away behind a mask of calm. Revenge requires patience, and she is willing to wait for the perfect time to strike. At the front of the lecture hall, Deculine begins his lesson. His voice carries power. Even a single word from him silences the room. He holds himself with the cold confidence of a man who believes he owns the space around him. He introduces himself again formally, this time focusing on his status. Head professor of the Magic Tower, a monarch mage, a rank that stands at the 4th tier among magic users. It's the kind of title that makes others sit up straighter. He then begins to explain the fundamentals of magic. His tone is steady, practiced, and firm. He breaks magic down into 2 parts, attributes and types. Most students already know this, but he goes over it anyway, setting the groundwork. Attributes are the roots, the origin of all magic. They include elements like fire or water, materials like metals or crystals, and objects that act as channels or conductors. The types of magic he lists include 9 categories: summoning, spirit, destruction, support, enchantment, manipulation, ductility, bewitchment, and harmony. To his surprise, the lecture goes far more smoothly than expected. Even though he's just reading from a script someone else prepared, the concepts begin to make perfect sense in his mind. The understanding attribute shows its true value. Each sentence feels clearer, each theory sharper. He doesn't just read, he gets it. The students listen closely. Their eyes follow his every move, not because he tries too hard, but because his presence demands it. The air around him carries weight. That usual arrogant attitude Deculine was known for doesn't feel forced now. Instead, it fits him naturally, like a perfectly tailored coat. He begins to wonder if, deep down, he might actually have what it takes to be a good teacher. He keeps the lecture flowing, now explaining how the way mana works depends on where it's stored. Mages use their head, knights draw from the heart, and those who balance both rely on a special inner core. It's basic, but important, and he presents it with ease. He adds a small lesson about focus being more important than natural talent. That line feels exactly like something Deculine would say, cold, practical, and just a little bit condescending. Still, Woojin knows the truth. He is not special. Not in the way the real prodigies are. His current mana level is 3,375. A proper name mage starts at 30,000. That difference is more than just a gap, it's a canyon. He reaches the end of the lecture and notices something strange. The last line of the script feels off, something the original Deculine would never say. Too soft, too humble. It doesn't match the sharpness of the rest. Still, he says it by asking if anyone has questions. Silence fills the room for a moment. Then, Ephraim stands up. She reports a strange discovery made the night before, an unusual spell found in the dormitory. She claims it might be connected to devil worship and then turns the spotlight on him. She asks him if he could help interpret that spell. She's clearly baiting him, using his stolen title as the genius spell interpreter against him. He doesn't take it lightly. He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he asks about her official status in the university's magic tower. Her pause gives him all the excuse he needs. He scolds her in front of the entire class. Not for the question, but for her behavior. She should have introduced herself formally before asking the question. He tells her that he wouldn't answer questions from a child who lacked basic manners. It's sharp, it's cruel, and it's exactly what someone like Deculine would say. He acknowledges the topic, but tells her it can't be addressed now. Not under these circumstances. Inside his mind, a quiet alert rings. The understanding attribute, for all its power, has drained a massive chunk of his mana during the lecture. It took 1,300 mana just to comprehend the lecture script. He wonders who knows how much mana it'll take on a spell he has never seen before. The cost of knowledge in this world isn't cheap, and he doesn't want to waste more points here. In the meantime, the classroom stirs with quiet laughter. Students lean toward one another, whispering behind their hands. Ephraim's bold move has turned into a failed spectacle. Her plan to challenge Deculine ends in embarrassment, and she knows it. Frustration burns in her chest, her eyes fixed ahead with cold determination. She refuses to let it go. Even after being dismissed, she pushes forward. She claims the university's magic tower is ignoring the strange spell, brushing it off as nonsense. To prove her point, she projects the spell in front of the class using magic, displaying it boldly. Her voice grows sharper. She demands an answer, putting the so-called genius spell interpreter in the spotlight once again. But inside, Deculine is tired. Woojin can feel it. His mana pool has dropped low. That last use of understanding had drained far more than expected. Still, there is no turning back now. Ephraim explains that the remaining first-year students tried to analyze the spell but failed. No one could figure it out. She asks for a hint, giving him one last chance to stumble. But he doesn't. He studies the spell and delivers a calm answer. It's barrier magic. More specifically, a type of bewitchment barrier. A trap disguised under something simple. The room falls quiet. His voice is clear, and his tone leaves no room for doubt. With a wave of the hand, he shuts the matter down. Just like that, it's over. A quiet notification appears. The side quest completes. He earns 0.5 store currency. A while later, elsewhere in the university, Ephraim sits in the cafeteria, chewing her food with far more anger than hunger. Each bite feels like a silent curse. She had walked into that classroom with the intention of exposing a fraud, but instead she only ended up helping him. Her question made her look like a fool. Her lack of etiquette gave him the upper hand. And worst of all, he actually answered. Ephraim bites her lip and clenches her fists. She tells herself that there's no way he could have known. He must have been caught off guard during the lecture. His answer had to be a lucky guess, a desperate attempt to sound smart in front of the students. He called it an enchantment magic without hesitation. Her mind races through the basics. Enchantment magic is tricky. It always needs a medium, something to anchor the magic to. A tool, scroll, even an object. Without it, the spell can't exist. So how can it be enchantment magic when there was nothing? No medium, no anchor. She remembers clearly. The circle she showed him was copied exactly from what appeared on the dormitory doors the night before. A strange, unfamiliar symbol that no one could explain. At first, it caused chaos, but now it's been tossed around as just some harmless puzzle for new students. A research topic, a novelty. She clenches her jaw, repeating it silently in her head. She knows he's full of crap, but before she can calm down, another student rushes over to her table, excitement all over her face. She calls Ephraim's name and nearly trips over herself in a rush to speak. The girl explains they've been analyzing the magic circle since that morning. And now it finally makes sense. It's a barrier spell. Once they reformulated the structure, everything clicked. Ephraim sits frozen. The student keeps talking, full of admiration. She says they had been too scared to ask Deculine anything. His sharp gaze and cold voice kept everyone at a distance. But Ephraim, she spoke up. She had guts. Ephraim blinks in confusion. None of this makes sense. She repeats the question, hoping she misheard. Was it really a barrier spell? The girl nods like it's the most obvious thing in the world. Then she gushes about how amazing Professor Deculine it is. How did he know it was enchantment-type magic without even having a medium? How could he possibly read something so confusing at a glance? Ephraim stares at her, saying nothing. Her thoughts spin in every direction. The student waves goodbye, thanking her and promising to include her name in the final report. Then she disappears into the crowd, still buzzing with excitement. Ephraim forces a smile, but inside it feels like something is dying. Her entire plan to humiliate him to reveal the truth behind his fake reputation has done the opposite. She tried to ruin him. Instead, she made him look even more brilliant. Now students are praising him more than ever. Her stomach turns. She looks at the lecture poster for the semester. Understanding elemental magic. Another chance for him to shine. Another stage built for a man who doesn't deserve it. Then a few words echo in her mind like a curse. Know your enemy and you will win. That wasn't just advice. That was a warning. This war is far from over. Ephraim doesn't care how smart he seems or how high his reputation rises. She will wait, plan, and strike again. One mistake is all it takes. Sooner or later, she'll prove it. He's not a genius. He's a thief in a crown. And thieves always fall. Deculine walks through the quiet halls of the university, the sound of his footsteps echoing against the stone walls. A strange feeling weighs on him. The earlier classroom confrontation with Ephraim could have gone terribly wrong. It was only by luck and a little help from the understanding attribute that he made it through without disaster. But that luck came at a cost. He now realizes that his attribute had triggered without warning the moment he looked at the spell. Just from observing the complex lines and symbols of the magic circle, a huge amount of mana had drained away. It hadn't even been a proper spellcast, only recognition. The cost of knowledge here is higher than he ever expected. Even if his mana reserve were doubled, he doubts he could have made sense of it without the attribute. That spell wasn't normal. It was dangerous, mysterious, and far beyond what a first-year student should be playing with. And yet, it fell into his lap uninvited. Turning a corner, he nearly bumps into someone. Long white hair. Pale eyes like frost. A knight's poise in every step. The woman standing in front of him is no stranger. She is Deculein von Grahan-Yukline. Her face is the same as he remembers from the game's development, one of the most admired knights in the Empire's future. Skilled. Brave. Bound to rise higher than anyone else in her class. And right now, she stands before him as his fiancée. The moment feels too sharp, too real. Woojin, inside Deculine, freezes for a second. This encounter wasn't in the plan. He doesn't know how to handle it. Their relationship in the game was mostly political, cold, arranged, and built more for show than for love. But now, standing in front of her in the real world, it feels different. He greets her briefly, keeping his tone stiff. She returns the greeting with a calm look, but her words are pointed. She brings up something from a week ago, a promise. One that he, now living in Deculine's body, has no memory of. He tries to act like it's nothing, says he doesn't remember. He even thinks about walking away from the conversation entirely, but she stops him. Her voice holds weight. She's not going to let him avoid the topic. She asks if he's running away again. His answer is clumsy. He tells her that he must have forgotten due to being ill for a while. He then shamelessly asks her if she mind reminding him what promise they made. Yuli doesn't get angry. Instead, she reminds him. Days before, she told him if he's willing to drop the act, if he can stand in front of everyone and admit his arrogance, admit that everything he's been showing is fake, then she will stay by his side, no matter what, even if the world falls apart. She then tells him that it was a mistake to trust him. She doesn't argue. She tells him to leave and simply turns and walks away, her back straight, her steps quiet. Still arrogant as ever, he replies then he will take his leave. She cannot believe it. She grits. His attitude is unbearable. The engagement between them had always been a deal, nothing more. A talented mage and a strong knight, two noble families combining for power and status. It was useful, smart, expected. No one had reason to object. It made sense on paper. But paper doesn't feel. Paper doesn't bleed. There was never love in this match. Only names, reputation, and the cold smile of politics. The truth eventually came out. Both noble families, the Yuklines and the Freydens, began to see through the fake image. Deculine, the man who once bragged about his unmatched spell analysis skills, turned out to be a complete fraud. His so-called talent didn't exist. All his achievements had been built on lies. He had climbed the ladder of success using empty words and fake titles. The position of professor, one of the highest in the university, had been earned not through merit, but through manipulation. He called himself a genius, but when the time came to prove it, there was nothing. After one public incident where his failure became too obvious, his so-called brilliance disappeared completely. No more results, no more breakthroughs, just silence. The once praised prodigy became a disappointment no one wanted to talk about. Though families tried to cover it up, they didn't want the scandal to ruin their names. It wasn't about justice or truth. It was about pride keeping their reputations clean and untouchable, a mess hidden behind fine curtains. Yuli, however, wasn't the type to overlook dishonesty. She could live without love. That wasn't what bothered her. But lies, deception, that crossed a line. Her values came from her knightly vows, discipline, truth, and honor. She had made a deal with Deculine and he agreed, but deep down she knew he wouldn't keep his end. And so she decided she wouldn't either. Deculine continues walking across the campus, now heading toward the Magic Tower, the most respected department at the Empire's most elite university. In this world, it holds the same kind of weight as the medical department at Seoul National University. The tower itself is like the university's hospital, a place where only the best belong. The path there is beautiful. Neatly arranged trees, clean stone paths, and wide lawns stretch across the grounds. The buildings rise tall and proud, giving off the feeling of a top-tier American college campus. He slows down for a moment to take it in. This is the world he helped build. He remembers the long nights he and his team spent designing every detail. The sleepless hours, the endless debates over architecture and color schemes. And now he walks through it in someone else's body. It feels strange, both bitter and sweet at the same time. His thoughts are broken by a sudden bump. A young man crashes into him, clearly in a rush. The student stumbles back and quickly apologizes, explaining that he was in a hurry to meet him. He seems nervous, eyes darting up in panic. Deculine studies him for a second and realizes this is the same student who delivered the lecture script earlier. He thought he was being ambushed. He squints and takes a guess at his name. But he gets it completely wrong. The student corrects him, saying his name is Alan, not Zoro. Deculine brushes off the mistake, saying he mixed up the names. Alan doesn't argue. He just sighs and says okay, but inside the boy is clearly judging him. The names don't sound anything alike. Still, he keeps it to himself. There's no winning in correcting someone like Deculine too directly. Later, in Deculine's office, the mood shifts to work. Alan stands by the desk, holding out a list. These are the sponsorship forms for new mages, young talent hoping to join the university's research programs. Just like labs back in the real world, the Magic Tower needs money to function. Nothing moves without funding, and professors are expected to pick their favorites and support them financially. Deculine scans the list carefully. One name on the page glows faintly in gold. That glow is not from magic, it's from a special attribute tied to the body he now lives in. The attribute is called Wealthy Magnate. It's rare and works together with his enhanced vision. letting him see which people or investments might bring big returns. The golden name isn't glowing without reason. It signals potential, profit, a future that might pay off. Several other names carry a faint shimmer too, but one outshines the rest. Efrain Luna, she is more than just a student. She is one of the main characters in the game. Her story matters, and her fate is tangled up with his in all the worst ways. Deculine knows the truth. One of the developers working on her character hated him. That person had written her backstory to include a tragic twist, her father driven to death by Deculine's actions. That kind of story isn't easy to erase. Everyone sees her as his enemy, and because of that, no one dares to sponsor her. People are afraid. They worry that if they support Efrain, Deculine will retaliate. No one wants to cross someone like him, so she stands alone, ignored by the very system meant to support talent. If things continue like this, the story will unfold just like it did in the original game. The engagement gets cancelled, Efrain rises, and Deculine dies. The story wants him dead. The villains, the events, the entire game's fate, they're all pushing him toward a bad end. His death isn't just a risk, it's practically scheduled. A sword in the chest, a magic blast to the head, a quiet sip of poisoned wine, a bomb planted under his seat. The possibilities are endless, but one truth stays the same: he won't make it if he plays by the old rules. The original Deculine would never have helped Efrain. He would have ignored her, maybe even tried to block her progress out of pride. But Woojin is not that man, and he doesn't plan to die like one either. He grabs a pen and begins to write. New instructions form in his mind. He tells Alan to submit the sponsorship documents and to collect some books from the library. Research needs to start now. There's no time to wait. Alan nods and leaves, still probably wondering what's going on. Deculine, this cold, proud professor, is making choices no one expects. And that's exactly the point. Deculine sits with one clear thought: money is survival. In this world filled with enemies and hidden traps, wealth isn't just power. It's protection. With enough money, he can dodge death, buy safety, and build influence. Investing in a young mage like Efrain is a start, but it's not enough. That alone won't save him. This body, Deculein von Grahan-Yukline, isn't built to win. In the game, he was nothing more than a mid-level boss, a roadblock. His job was to lose, to die in some dramatic way that made the main characters look good. And those same characters are now walking around, breathing, and very capable of killing him without a second thought. He looks at the long road ahead and knows he needs a new path, a real plan. Natural talent he has almost none. In a world where monsters and heroes are everywhere, Deculine is painfully average. His magic isn't impressive. His combat skills are weak. He isn't even well-liked. Most people want him dead just because it would make things easier. But there's one thing he does have: his attributes. These special traits, hidden beneath the surface, are the keys to rewriting his fate. He may not be able to use all four elements like the strongest mages, but he has potential in earth and fire. And when combined with his ability to manipulate objects, a powerful trait unlocks: Midas Touch. This rare attribute is no joke. It consumes mana to bring out the hidden potential in others. Not just magic, value, power, opportunity. He can turn something ordinary into something priceless if he learns to control it. His metal affinity also gives him access to telekinetic control. That means he can move weapons without touching them, floating blades, mental attacks. A skill often ignored in this world, even though it's incredibly useful. People overlook it because it's not flashy. But Deculine sees it for what it is: a way to fight without brute strength. To make all of this work, he must master manipulation. And that starts small, very small. He opens the book about basic telekinesis he got. He focuses on it and channels his mana. The moment he connects, information rushes into his head. Everything about basic telekinesis becomes clear. Techniques, control, balance, it all fits into place. Then, without even trying too hard, he lifts a nearby paintbrush into the air. Smooth, steady, controlled. That's when he realizes something important. The spell is now burned into his memory. He doesn't need to cast it again. It's part of him now. In the past, this kind of thing only happened on a screen, through clicks and text boxes. But now it's real. The game isn't just being played anymore. He's living it. Deculine stares at the levitating paintbrush. The success feels good, but it also reminds him of how far he still has to go. Telekinesis may be strong, but not strong enough. Not when death can come from every direction. He needs more than tricks. He needs real power. A wild idea forms in his mind. What if he didn't just use magic in the air, but on himself? In this world, the size of a magic circle matters. The larger it is, the more powerful it becomes. Most people use one in the brain, some in the heart. But what if he covered his entire body in them? Every inch of skin, from mind to chest to inner core. It sounds mad, but madness might be his only way out. Thanks to the understanding attribute, he quickly grasps the risks. Overloading his body could lead to serious damage. Mana imbalance, nerve collapse, permanent injury, maybe even death. But Deculine is not made of glass. He carries another powerful attribute, Iron Body. This trait gives his body a higher resistance to magical stress and physical pain. A normal person would fall apart under this kind of experiment, but not him. At least, that's what he hopes. His mana level right now is 800. Low, but enough to try once. He prepares himself for the pain, and then he does it. The spell activates. It burns through him like wildfire. His bones feel like they're shattering. His muscles scream. His veins feel like molten iron is flowing through them. The pain is worse than anything he imagined, but he doesn't break. He doesn't cry out. He holds on. Eventually, the pain fades. He collapses, drained completely. His mana drops to just 1. From over 800 down to almost nothing. But when he looks at his shoulder, he sees the reward. A magic circle has formed, real and complete. He estimates the process will take about 2 weeks to finish. If he can endure this every day, soon his body will be covered in magic circles. That will change everything. Time passes. A full month goes by since the first seminar. Today marks the beginning of his formal lecture at the university's Magic Tower. Students gather in anticipation. The air is filled with whispers, rumors, and guesses. Upperclassmen have already begun talking. Stories about the new professor have spread fast. No one knows exactly what to expect. Some wonder if all his classes will be like this, strange, intense, and unpredictable. The first task he gives is simple, at least on the surface. Students are told to head to areas rich with elemental energy and study there using special signboards. It's an unusual start, but nothing about Deculine is ever normal. The students stand scattered across the training field, left alone with no sign of their professor. No guidance, no instructions, just confusion hanging in the air like fog. They wait unsure, beginning to wonder if they've been abandoned. Ephraim, standing among them, mutters to herself in frustration. She finds it completely irresponsible. Deculine gives them a strange task and then vanishes without a trace. It feels like a joke. A typical move from someone who acts like he's too important to deal with students. In the middle of her thoughts, someone bumps into her. The hit is light but sudden, and she spins around, startled. She's ready to scold whoever it is, but her words catch in her throat. This girl is none other than Sylvia von Iliad. The moment is jarring. Ephraim recognizes her instantly, but Sylvia doesn't even look her way. She walks off, acting like Ephraim isn't even there. Not a single glance, not a single word. Ephraim watches in disbelief. The coldness cuts deeper than she expects. It's not just rude, it feels personal. The idea that Sylvia might not recognize her is almost worse than open hostility. Still reeling, Ephraim gathers her focus. She lifts her hand and builds a structure of rock and ice using her magic. It's a smooth process, precise and controlled. But her mind is far from calm. The memory returns, sharp, bitter, and unwanted. 10 years ago, House Iliad had surrounded her home. They feared her father's research and her potential. They came out with kindness, but with threats. They wanted control. They wanted silence. That event changed everything. And now one of them stands here, acting like none of it happened. Ephraim tries to understand. Is Sylvia really not remembers? Or is she pretending? Then things shift again. Sylvia begins drawing in mana from the surrounding area. Not just from the air, but directly from the elemental energy Ephraim had spent time gathering. Bit by bit, it disappears, stolen right under her nose. Ephraim stares, stunned. Sylvia behaves like they've never met, but clearly holds something against her. Ephraim snaps. She points at Sylvia, furious. She calls her out for stealing mana, trying to push her aside, and using magic to force her to drop her gathering tools. The words come sharp and fast. All the frustration from the last few minutes spills out at once. But Sylvia just stands there, confused. Her face shows no guilt, no shame, only confusion, as if Ephraim is speaking in a foreign language. Then she speaks. She says she doesn't even know who Ephraim is. But she does know her father, the man who once held a noble title, now nothing more than a name on a grave. What follows is worse. Sylvia doesn't just mention him, she mocks him. She drags his name through the dirt, speaks of him like he was nothing, like his death was deserved. The words cut deep. Ephraim's anger boils over. Her fingers twitch with magic. She refuses to let this go. Her father wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve this kind of insult. Not from someone like Sylvia, someone who hides behind a famous name and uses her magic like a weapon. She decides to stop holding back. Her mana rises. The air around her shifts. Anyone nearby can feel the tension building. Other students watch in shock and surprise. They want to stop things before they get worse. but they picked the wrong time. Ephraim turns towards Sylvia like a storm. Her voice is full of rage. She demands Sylvia to repeat her words. The magic around her pulses with color, bright, hot, and wild. Green energy shoots out fast and hard. And then it gets worse. She launches the energy blast towards Sylvia. Sylvia realizes too late that she has messed up. Her sharp words, her arrogance, her recklessness, it all adds up to this disaster. Somehow, she forces out a yellow energy barrier, barely managing to shield herself from the chaos she helped create. The trading field becomes a war zone. Their energies collide and explosion rocks the area. Fire tears through the sky. Debris flies in all directions, crashing into the ground and the walls. 2 more students are caught in the blast, their bodies thrown like ragdolls. Smoke rises. In the middle of all this destruction stands Ephraim. Her chest heaves with every breath. Her hands are still glowing faintly with the remnants of her magic. Her eyes, once quiet and soft, now blaze with fury. This is not the Ephraim who waited her turn or held her tongue. This is someone who has had enough. She refuses to bow her head to Sylvia or any other spoiled noble who thinks their last name gives them the right to crush others. She will not be pushed into the shadows. Not anymore. Around them, the remaining students begin to gather. Some rush to help the injured. Others try to understand what just happened. Confusion spreads quickly. Questions bounce around what caused the explosion. Who started it? Are they safe? Ephraim doesn't hold back. Her voice slices through the noise. She shouts at Sylvia, pointing straight at her. She accuses her of insulting her father's name, of threatening her family long ago, and of invading their territory with nothing but fear and pride. But Sylvia's attention is elsewhere now. Her eyes widen as she stares at something unnatural. A dark light begins to pulse between them. It doesn't glow, it consumes. It looks like a hole in reality itself, a void swallowing mana, air, and sound. The students around them step back in fear. They've seen this kind of phenomenon before. It's dangerous, wild, unpredictable. The kind of energy that doesn't care who you are, it destroys everything in its path. This dark void has formed from the clashing of Sylvia's and Ephraim's mana. The ground begins to shake. Magic pulls inward like a black tide. Warnings break out. Shouts echo through the field. People scream about an explosion. The magic is about to break. The metal will become shrapnel. Ephraim watches in stunned silence. She feels the force pulling at her body, her energy, her breath. Then everything stops. No sound. No wind. The chaos freezes midair. The void shrinks into nothing. Above them hovers Deculine. The blades float around him like a quiet warning, sharp and precise. Each fragment of metal is held perfectly still, caught mid-flight. The explosion is no longer a threat. He has neutralized it without saying a word. The professor has finally arrived, and he did it with more control than either of them could imagine. The trading field falls completely silent. Every eye turns toward Deculine, standing there, calm and composed like some figure out of legend. His magic doesn't just stop the chaos, it turns it into something breathtaking. The frozen shards of metal, once deadly, now form a perfect structure, suspended in space like an artwork made of blades. It's more than powerful, it's beautiful. The students stare in awe. Their earlier fear turns into fascination. Whispers pass between them. They recognize the spell as enchantment magic, difficult, advanced, and almost impossible to control at this level, but Deculine controls it like it's nothing. He ends the lecture with calm authority. His words cut through the silence, and no one dares to argue. Everyone, except the ones directly involved, is ordered to leave. Ephraim feels her stomach drop. The weight of what just happened crushes down on her. The fire in her chest has gone cold. She stands still, realizing how serious this has become. Magic clashes, injuries, a near disaster, and all of it linked to her. She already knows what's coming next, a disciplinary meeting, and she dreads it. The scene shifts to a colder place, a small, strict room. No windows, no smiles, just pressure. Deculein von Grahan-Yukline is there, and he is not alone. He is accompanied by Chairwoman Adeline Cizelian, the one holding power over academic justice in the tower. Her face is unreadable. 2 professors, Rilin and Retlin, also arrive there. Ephraim is sitting in the hall below in silence, and with her is Sylvia. Both of them were accused of causing havoc earlier. Chairwoman Adeline Cizelian starts the proceeding. Ephraim is accused of attacking a member of House Iliad and worse, of being a commoner who somehow entered the academy without official approval. The accusation cuts deep, not because it's true, but because of how easily it is spoken, as if Ephraim doesn't belong here at all. Professors then praise Deculine. They compliment his magical skill, call his frozen display of blades impressive, and if he wasn't present there would be casualties. But Deculine sees right through it. This isn't admiration, it's politics. The outcome of this meeting has already been decided. It doesn't matter who was right. Sylvia is from House Iliad, a powerful, rich, and deeply connected noble family. Ephraim is not. In a game of status, Sylvia wins before the first word is spoken. Deculine understands this. He has played this world's game long enough to know when the board is rigged, and right now it is. If he wants to protect his place and maybe even live through this cursed story, he has to twist the situation in his favor. He has no choice. Professor Relin scolds them both for letting things escalate. His voice is cold and flat, saying someone could have died if Deculine hadn't intervened. It's a reminder of how close things came to disaster. He asks Ephraim what led her to attack Sylvia in a cold tone. Ephraim sits quietly. She doesn't respond, she can't. The truth about her family, her father, and her rage, none of it can be spoken here. Not in this room. Not in front of Deculine. She knows he's watching her. She can feel his gaze, and she can't tell if he sees a student or a threat. The meeting grows colder. The professors begin to circle around Ephraim like vultures, picking apart her every action. Their voices carry a mocking tone full of fake concern but dripping with judgment. They speak of her like she's nothing more than a hot-tempered commoner trying too hard to stand out. They call it inferiority complex, twisting her silence into something shameful. Ephraim keeps her eyes down. Her fists clench in her lap. Every word from them makes her feel smaller. Sylvia sits with calm confidence, delivering her side of the story without effort. She claims the whole mess started because her work was accidentally destroyed during class. She says it so smoothly, so gently, like she's the real victim. The professors don't question her. They nod, agreeing too quickly. One of them even goes further. He calls out Ephraim directly, saying she has anger issues, that she's a danger to her peers, that this kind of behavior deserves punishment. He even brings up expulsion, like it's already decided. Not because she's wrong, but because she doesn't have the right name. Ephraim feels completely alone. No one in that room is on her side. No one listens. The walls feel too close, the air too tight. She sits there, insulted, blamed, dismissed. In that moment, she realizes there is no one left to protect her. Her thoughts turn bitter. She blames Deculine. If not for him, none of this would have happened. Chairwoman Adeline looks around the room and speaks in her usual composed voice. She says that it seems like the opinions in the room are starting to come together. Then, just before ending the meeting, she asks for one final opinion. She turns to Deculine, pointing out that he was there when the incident happened. Ephraim's heart sinks. She feels like this is it. This is where everything crashes down. Her future at the tower, her studies, her father's name, everything feels like it's hanging by a thread. And Deculine's about to cut it. But then something happens that no one expects. Deculine speaks. His voice rings through the room, strong and firm. But instead of turning to Ephraim, he looks straight at Sylvia. Everyone freezes. He doesn't address the so-called commoner. He doesn't repeat the blame that's already been tossed around the room. He questions Sylvia, the same noble girl who had been praised, protected, and treated like royalty since the beginning of the meeting. The air shifts immediately. Students, professors, everyone is shocked. Even Sylvia doesn't know what to say. Her confident expression begins to fade. Her mouth opens slightly in disbelief. Then Deculine repeats himself, sharper this time. He asks her again, can she truly say she's innocent? Is she sure without a doubt that she did nothing wrong? Ephraim doesn't understand. She sits frozen, confused, staring at him. Her mind spins. Why is he doing this? Why is he turning the focus on Sylvia? Professor Relin stammers, clearly caught off guard. His voice trembles as he tries to understand Deculine's meaning. The situation is slipping out of his control. Deculine doesn't stop. He challenges Sylvia directly. He tells her she had the power to stop the situation, but she chose not to. He points out that everyone expected great things from her, so is this all she's capable of? The words hit hard. Sylvia lowers her head. The proud daughter of House Iliad suddenly looks small. She finally speaks. Her voice is quiet, filled with shame. She admits the truth. She didn't stop the chaos because she wanted Ephraim to be punished more harshly. A noble who let someone suffer just to feel superior. So much for grace. Ephraim can barely believe what she's hearing. Sylvia, who stood untouchable just moments ago, has now confessed to manipulating the situation for her own benefit. But even more confusing is Deculine. Why is he doing this? Ephraim turns the thought over in her mind. She doesn't understand. Out of everyone here, she's the one who lost control. She caused the most damage. In her eyes, she's clearly at fault. So why isn't she the one being questioned? Why is the villain defending her? Professor Relin, still shaken, tries to bring the blame back to where he believes it belongs. He insists that in every situation, it's the aggressor who must be punished, not the one defending themselves. He stutters through his argument, clearly uncomfortable with how the meeting has shifted. But Deculine doesn't flinch. He responds without hesitation, cold and direct. If that is the logic they want to use, then the fault lies with him. He was the one who arranged the lecture that day. He was the one who gave the assignment. So if someone has to be blamed, let it be him. Rillin, of course, quickly backs down. No one in the tower wants to point a finger at Deculine, not even those who have supported Sylvia from the start. But something in Rillin's expression changes. His usual smugness fades into quiet thought. He can't ignore how Deculine's defense, oddly enough, feels fair. Ephraim watches it all unfold in disbelief. He's challenging the very professor who has been shielding Sylvia. He's flipping the whole conversation and somehow doing it with confidence. For the first time in this awful room, Ephraim feels something other than fear. She feels seen. A small flicker of hope stirs in her chest. She doesn't understand his reasons, but she can't deny it anymore. Deculine is standing up for her. She keeps her eyes on him, thoughts racing. This doesn't make sense. He should be trying to get rid of her. That's what the Deculine she knows would do. He's the villain, the arrogant, cold noble, the man who crushed people like her without hesitation. So why? Why go this far? Chairwoman Adeline speaks again, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. She announces the final decision. There will be no punishments, no expulsions. This fight, full of mistakes and danger, will be written off as a clash between two first-year students. Ephraim doesn't move. Her hands tremble slightly as she clenches her fist. She can barely believe it. She had prepared herself for the worst. Her mind had already accepted the idea of being thrown out. She was sure Deculine would make an example of her, but he didn't. The meeting ends and people begin to leave. Conversations return. Footsteps echo across the hall. Rillin walks beside Deculine, now changing his tone completely. He praises him, calls him sharp, thoughtful, claims Deculine only acted for the good of the students. The same man who moments ago wanted Ephraim gone is now bowing his head with empty compliments. Ephraim stays behind for a moment, her heart pounding. Then she calls out. From the lower end of the hallway, she raises her voice and asks to speak with him. Just one question. She watches him turn to face her. Inside her mind, questions scream. Does he remember the name Luna? Does he know who her father was? The man who spent his whole life drowning in sorrow after being ruined by Deculine. The man who gave everything to spell interpretation, only to be forgotten, betrayed, and destroyed. Does he know, or does he not care? And that was it from today's video. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button, as today's like goal is 1,500 likes. Comment next part down below to see what happens next. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.